Hey everyone, Tim here from SnapAttack. Let's dig into this week's Threat Snapshot. So today we're going to be doing a deep dive on Windows service creation. Now, I know this technique on the surface may not be the most interesting, but it is widely used by threat actors, criminal organizations, even nation states. And ultimately, this is definitely something you want to have in your detection library. So I guess a little bit of background on the technique itself. So generally speaking, attackers are going to use this as a persistence mechanism. Again, most of the services that Windows is running, they're going to auto start with the system. So again, that can survive a reboot. And again, the nice thing about services is most often they're going to be running in an elevated context. So this also is a good opportunity for privilege escalation. Obviously, you need to be an administrator to create a service on Windows, but the services themselves will likely be running as the system process. So again, if you bring your own vulnerable driver or you create your own services, you can run those in the elevated context. And like I've said, we have numerous threat actors here. You can see APTs, you can see other groups that have used service creation. So definitely should be something in your playbook. Now, a lot of times you're going to ask the question of how do I go about in creating a service? Specifically, what are the ways an attacker can do this? And I'm going to point to a really good blog post by Jared Atkinson over at SpecterOps. This one is called Playing with a Full Deck. And this is some interesting research that he was doing, again, around this hypothesis of, I want to detect malicious service creation. So there was, again, a fragile analytic looking for sc.exe with the process command line create. So using that to look for service creation. So that was, again, their base condition. And again, after doing some research, they had discovered that there's this registry key here. So HKLM System CurrentControlSet Services, and then the service name. So these keys get created when SC or any other binary actually creates the service. And again, really, this is kind of interesting in that, with this original research here, talking about SC create actually turned out to be pretty rare in terms of all the malicious service creations. When they were looking at the registry key, they found, again, from their sample data set, there were 104,000 services that were created, and only about 29 of those, so 0.3%, were created with sc.exe. So again, this is kind of where they're talking about, and the moral of this story is really that in order to look for malicious service creations, you have to make sure you're hunting through all service creations. Which, again, kind of did lead us down our own pathway, which we'll be talking about at the CAMLIS conference next week. And this is, recreating that research that Jared did, but trying to see if we can use, artificial intelligence, machine learning, data science methods to come to the same conclusion. Obviously, it might be a little bit of a stretch to take a random technique. We can, how can we automatically assume that, that registry key is going to be the smoking gun? Obviously, your really advanced tier 3 analysts might have some of that knowledge, but by and large, again, this is really where I think SnapAttack has a bright future to shine is, we're labeling all of this different data on the back end, all of our attacks, all of our detections, and this is really going to be very powerful as ways that we can, highlight those smoking guns and those things that maybe a user doesn't see themselves. So again, this session here, this is what I'm calling service creation 4 ways. We create services through 4 different methods, obviously, via sc.exe, again, a built-in binary. Via PowerShell, they have a new service commandlet where you can create a service. We're using FireEye or Mandiant's Sharp Persist. So this is, again, another interesting one. So they're using C# and some API calls to under the hood to create the service. So again, not actually like a wrapper for SC or PowerShell. And then WMI, specifically we're using a PowerShell wrapper to, again, call that Win32 service and create the service that way. So we have our captured threat here in SnapAttack. We can see actually running this, 4 different ways. We can see the attacks, we can see the detections. I can also just open this up here for a little bit of proof, is that we open services.exe. We can see the 4 different methods, 1, 2, 3, and 4. We have 4 different services that were created here. So again, really the question about this research is, what is that best detection that we have in the platform, and which one should I deploy? So we can see here lots of different detection opportunities. Again, looking at this on the process graph, just a little different view, we can see again the process creation events and then the 4 different ways. So ultimately, how should you, which detection should you prioritize, and how would you want to hunt or how would you want to detect on this behavior? So again, there's lots of different options. I think one of the most obvious ones is the built-in Windows security event logs. So there is 4697. Again, the description is a service was installed on the system. And for this particular captured threat, again, we created 4 services, and we can see we have 4 of these events here. So this detected method 1 with sc.exe. This detected method 2, which was using PowerShell New-Service. This had method 3 with the sharp persist, and this also had method 4 with the WMI creation. So if you do have Windows security events and you are forwarding those, this would be definitely a good detection opportunity. Keep in mind, these are for malicious services or potentially malicious services, but anytime a service is going to be installed, this event is going to trigger. So alone, there's going to be a lot of false positives and things that you would have to use or have to kind of weed through. So alerting on this event alone is probably not enough. You would want to take a look at the service name, take a look at some of the other context clues on why is this service being created here. Obviously, again, there's EDR logs that you could take a look at. So some of the different strategies around this are going to be looking at, process creation events, command lines. Again, these are definitely going to be a little bit more fragile here. And I think this is kind of what the point was with the original research by Jared's team is, again, this also might not count all the different ways that you can create a service. So, this detection here, for example, is looking at, 2 of those ways. So they're looking for sc.exe creations, as well as, again, you have that PowerShell New-Service on the command line. So this works, it's effective, but obviously there's different ways that services can be created. So, if you were only able to deploy one detection, this might not be the one. Similarly, you've got, the sharp persist usage here, which again, this one would be looking more specifically for, again, a image or product called sharp persist and some of the different command line options, which again, we can see it hits on, it detects. So this certainly is a valid detection, but again, very fragile here. And really, this is kind of the point of Snap Attack is helping you determine which detections that you can and want to deploy. So maybe you don't have Windows event logs and maybe all you do have is an EDR and process events. These are going to be the best detections that you have, even if they are somewhat fragile. Whereas if you have, say again, those registry keys that are being logged as part of your EDR, we can see here with the Sysmon event ID 12, just within the last 24 hours when the session was created, you can see that HKey local machine system CurrentControlSet Services. We can see 4, really 5 different creations. This one here from another threat. You can see here this is a PSExec service. So yet another sort of way that you can create, doing that service creation. PSExec obviously being used as a lateral movement technique. Or again, another way of executing commands likely on a remote system. But that too also has a service creation element too. So again, this is really just kind of underscoring that point of there's, multiple ways that you can, kind of chase these, different malicious activities down and, helping you figure out which ones those are best. So like I mentioned, this is something that we have been looking at here at Snap Attack. So our director of AI, Maeve Mulholland, is going to be presenting at the CAMLIS conference next week. And again, specifically, we were trying to answer the question of, can we actually use data science techniques to figure out that, from all these different ways of creating services, that there is a registry key under the hood, and that's the one that we should be detecting on. So again, just a little preview from some of the slides here. Again, that methodology is, we took those 4 different ways to create those services. We added a lot of variance in terms of timing, service names, the creation methods, just to make sure that as we're, again, trying to train on that data, we're not overfitting for, specific components of it. So again, we were running services nonstop. We had background noise and other, activity on there. We created, 89,000 unique keys. We ran this for 17 hours and generated enough data that we could, actually kind of comb through, process and start to see some of those, interesting pieces come up. So Not going to spoil the talk, but definitely check a look at this, especially if you are interested in more of the data science and machine learning aspects of this. It's totally free to attend online. You can register virtually. So this is camliswebsite.org/tickets. And again, that talk is going to be next Friday. It's at the 10:30 slot. The title is, again, Playing Cat and Mouse with the Attacker, Frequent Item Set Mining in the Registry. So be sure to check it out.